Welcome to CPAC Now America UnCanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp. Joining me today is the founder of TruthTells.org, Jeffrey Berk. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me.
It's great to be back.
It is great that you're here because I think the timing is so incredibly important. I just saw, and it was such a disturbing video that I don't even know if we can even play it here, where these women, these Israeli soldiers, were literally being raped, and you see the blood. It is awful. These are the hostages that have been caught by these Hamas terrorists. I watched that video and I thought to myself, where's the outrage from the leftist feminist groups to say this is horrific what they're doing to women? Complete silence coming from women, including Democrat women from the squad. How would they respond to that?
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Yeah.
I think we both unfortunately realize that critique is not coming anytime soon. Mm-hmm. It's against their narrative, and you could keep. What happened to Me Too? What happened to Believe All Women? What happened to the pussy hats? It's
the women's really, right, the women's march, right?
Yeah.
And yet these women that are, this video is so heart-wrenching, and I just find that we've entered into this place where you've seen these Democrat congressmen, Steve Cohen being one of them, Congressman Nadler, Jerry Nadler, basically, again, they kind of talk tough and say they support Israel, but then they don't shut down the squad and say your voice is not where we need to be as a party. Are you surprised by that?
It's really been a lurch to the Marxist socialist left since 2018, which brought this element into our political ecosystem, and it's really what is leading the Biden administration right now? It's like it's the tail wagging the dog right now.
So you put out it was a post on, pointing the finger at Congressman Steve Cohen and several other Democrat congressmen, and you got a response. What happened?
We've been very fortunate to have a lot of coverage for Truth Tells. I've had op-eds in Newsweek and Fox Digital and I-24 TV, and I posted one of the many Fox pieces on what we're doing in anti-Semitism. And in the bio, it was really innocuous, but I said, if everybody really wants to point the finger at some of the culprits of this, I think that these legacy Jewish leaders like Rep. Nadler, Lois Franklin, Rep. Cohen are where you really should start to point the finger. And surprisingly, Steve Cohen replied on that Twitter. Mm-hmm. And he, I'm sure he just thought he was being funny. He called it some kind of satire. And unfortunately for Steve, or the Congressman Cohen, we had a 30-second spot on him, and we reposted it. I think what the kids call it, clapback. So
more that you're much cooler than I am. I want to play the 30-second clip so that our viewers can take a look at it.
Congresswomen Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib don't believe Israel should exist. Omar equates Israel with the Taliban. Tlaib says it's an apartheid state. But Steve Cohen helped elect these anti-Semites to leadership roles in the Progressive Caucus. Omar now holds the second highest position. Why? And why doesn't Cohen demand Omar and Tlaib be censored rather than voting with them 97% of the time? 97%? Truth Tells gives Steve Cohen an F for his failure to fight anti-Semitism. Join us at TruthTells.org and let's fight anti-Semitism together.
So why is it so important for voters, especially Jewish voters, to recognize that the Jewish congressional leaders across the country are not representing the best interest of, I would say, the U.S. and Israeli alliance, the much needed U.S. and Israeli alliance?
I think that most citizens, but getting specifically to Democrat Jewish voters, are frankly, and no offense, because it's hard to keep up with everything, they're ignorant that this Congressional Progressive Caucus even exists in the first place. They've certainly connected the dots. You've got Omar walking around Columbia. There was this super slick move, and it was gross, but super slick move she talked about when the reporter said, well, hey, aren't you happy that there's some Jewish people here protesting? And she said, yeah. There's clearly Jewish people that are anti-genocide, and the others are pro-genocide. So it was makes my blood boil.
Right.
But it was a slick way to establish or try to establish that Israel equals genocide.
Yeah.
And getting to the point that you ask, I don't think that they know that this CPC exists, and it's what has given people like Tlaib and Omar a platform. She's been voted as number 2 out of this 100-member chair. And to your point is, part of the CPC are these leaders like Jerry Nadler and Steve Cohen and Lois Frankel, who are doing nothing to except elevate Rashida Tlaib as a chair, Jamal Bowman as a chair, and it's grossly hypocritical.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're allowing these people, they support these people to be committee chairmen, at the time. I do want to say you wrote this op-ed in Newsweek's. It starts with the Jews, but it never ends with the Jews. Talking about that anti-Semitism is not just, it's really about Marxism and communism. And so how do we connect the dots? How can, when you're making this argument where, you have these non-Jewish voters and they kind of are out there trying to figure things out as they're hearing the craziness from the pro-Hamas sympathizers and then the Jewish people, how do you explain anti-Semitism is not just about Jews? It goes beyond that. There's a connection.
Yeah. What I'm really trying to tell and share and advocate to as many people as I can, it's very binary. You say, wow, this is awful that any people of any religion or any color are being castigated in this fashion.
Right.
But what I'm really trying to encourage people to say is think bigger. I'm not trying to get you to rally behind me because you feel sympathy for this Jewish population. This is just a symptom of a greater anti-American Marxist doctrine of oppressor versus the oppressed. And Israel is just the first inning of what this attack around the world is.
Right.
And I think it's finally starting to the dots are finally starting to be connected, because what you're seeing now, because the universities let this stuff, and they're still going on. They haven't stopped it, and we've talked about how the Germans are stopping these things.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing are literally the same people who are saying river to the sea, death to Israel, are now saying death to America. And what more proof do you as an American citizen need?
When you're watching these protests happening on university campuses, it seems like they're calming down just a little bit. But I think as we're moving into the summer, it's always the summer before the election, there's upheaval. I mean, we saw this with George Floyd in 2020, which then led to the creation of the BLM and Antifa movement. They got very activated, very organized, burning down cities. What's your expectation as we're moving into the summer? I mean, you're looking at the DNC convention in Chicago. How do you think this is how they're going to regroup these Hamas propagandists going into building out their encampments? What's the next move for these people?
I think, well, on one thing, I think at least for the universities, thank gosh it's summer vacation.
Yeah.
So they, as institutions, could get a breather.
Sure.
And reboot, and I hope, we'll see, prevent, have a new policy set in place for the fall. But what you're talking for the summertime, it's just going to get worse.
Right.
When one of the things I think back, it's funny you brought up BLM. One of the most moving images I saw in 2 or 3 separate video encounters were, while the buildings are burning and stuff like that, groups of black women screaming at white Antifa type people for graffitiing and burning. They're like, why? Get out of here. You're making us look bad. This is making it. And they're just the same forces behind organizing and executing BLM, I think, are behind the campuses.
So there's gonna be a basically a protest of sorts where here in the DC area they're allowing for teachers and students to go and do this Free Palestine type of walkout, basically, and protest. And you're just going, I mean, so basically it's gone from like the university world to then now K through 12, where they're saying, all right, if you're a student and you want to be part of this Free Palestine, I mean, it's troubling that they're even trying to have this sort of propaganda and influence into K through 12, which, we're already dealing with gender ideology. They're already dealing with all these controversial issues to then throw into this the whole Free Palestine movement. Who is funding this? Like, who is behind all of these movements that we're seeing on university campuses now trying to infiltrate elementary and secondary schools?
There's a lot of it's rumor, a lot of it's hyperbole, but the thing that is concrete that and I have relations with people in the Judiciary Committee and the Oversight Committee. The thing that I know you're going to agree with me 100% is this foreign investment into the universities itself has to stop.
Right.
That could be calculated. Money it's provable. Clearly, money for Qatar is for a reason. We want you to fire these 3 professors, and we want you to hire these 3 professors who are much more aligned with our belief. And ultimately, it's anti-American. And you say, you look at what you're with these middle schoolers that you're talking about now,
and high schoolers,
And gee whiz, why is military recruiting at an all-time low, and will it ever bounce back?
Well, we've also seen that this has impacted President Biden politically. So the younger voters are basically saying, well, for a lot of reasons, they don't like they don't like Joe Biden, but one of the reasons being because they don't agree with how he's handled the Hamas-Israeli war. What's your sense in terms of how much this will impact the Biden presidential race?
I think it's going to have a much faster escalating damage to the administration. I think whether it's the Houthis or in Iran or the Red Sea or Israel itself, like we are just on the cliff of an actual war breaking out somewhere, and I don't see them getting any control in the domestic either.
Break down this poll for me. It's from Siena College. 72% of New Yorkers support. Now this is New Yorkers. Support peaceful demonstrations in support of Gaza. 61% say demonstrators have forgotten Hamas started the war, and it now feels like demonstrations have crossed the line into anti-Semitism. So they agree, okay, fine, peaceful demonstration, but now they're saying they've gone too far. What's your breakdown? Being a New Yorker, what's your breakdown on this and where the people are in New York?
The bad guys are winning. The bad guys are winning the propaganda war. And the data is right there. It's one of the reasons I shared that with you.
Right.
And there's just not enough conservative pushback. I was just talking to Ed Cox yesterday. He's the chairman of the New York GOP.
Right.
And, they have great resources that they're going to be drilling into, let's just say, the 1 million Brooklyn Jewish voters.
Right.
And the fact of withholding the aid, they're just going to keep beating this drum that, the Biden administration ultimately wasn't there for Israel as they promised.
Right.
People tell the joke a bunch of different ways. The new 2-state solution is Michigan and Nevada, not Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
That's their new 2-state solution.
So I got to ask you. So how do I have 2 college-age kids. I know you as well. How do we educate the non-Jewish voter? Right? How do we let them understand? Look, this is the Israeli, this is why we have to support Israel. This is the issue with anti-Semitism, how it's linked to communism and Marxism. How is that done? I know you and I were talking about, do we do a curriculum? Do we do a toolkit? Like, what is it that we need to do to make sure that that the real information is coming out?
I think what you're seeing is a optimistic trend. There's a lot of corporations and universities that are pulling DEI funding back into policing and safety and stuff like that. And I hope that trend continues in the classroom, that these resources of transgender strippers and all this zaniness in middle school and high school is substituted with more attention to civics and history, because this is really what is going to lead these children to have healthier relationships with people of other religions and other ethnicities and other perspectives.
But you're talking about that Jewish students don't feel safe. I mean, they don't feel safe on the college campuses. They can't even get to class in certain colleges. I mean, it's rough. I mean, how do they get through this?
My daughters, we're always in the city going to theater or Knicks games and stuff like that. My daughters don't even feel safe walking around.
Yeah, that is true.
They're walking around with me, and it's not a joke.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. We've seen Ireland, Norway, and Spain calling for the creation of a Palestinian state. So Netanyahu, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responds, the Palestinian terrorists cannot have a Palestine state. I mean, what is happening to Europe? Like, why the constant bowing down to the Palestinian terrorist and then critical of the Israeli government?
I think there's many things at play. One of the problems with a lot of those countries is they've have now these groups and sections of radicals, and they're putting a lot of pressure. They're creating this is why the Palestinians were kicked out of Jordan, kicked out of Lebanon,
Right.
kicked out of Syria, because they would get little communities, and the PLO would have their own state within a state, and then there would be civil war. And why Ireland and all these other countries are, I think, venting upon Israel. They're having their own problems with immigration, lack of funds. Their own infrastructures aren't capable of handling the influx that's going on right now. And I think it's easy to blame Israel.
Can we go back to reestablishing the Abraham Accords? I mean, do you think that at some point is possible again?
Call me silly, but I think Saudi Arabia is imminent.
Okay.
I do. I don't know. I don't see Qatar ever getting into it.
Well,
but clearly, if there's ever a Palestinian state, it has to be established and run by people with no nexus in any capacity, whatever, to the Iranian regime. They are on the record overtly again and again. They want the destruction of Israel. And absolutely, if they had the capability, they would have destroyed America yesterday.
I do want to get one more clip in and get your reaction to this. It was Senator Tim Kaine, basically, when the Iranian president died in the helicopter crash, basically saying it's okay to give condolences to him. Let's take a look.
What do you think about the Biden administration decision to show sympathy for the death of the Iranian president?
In any death of a leader under these circumstances raises all kinds of challenges, including challenges that it may lead to instability. And so I think it's appropriate to reach out and express concern when something like this happens.
Some of the families who were killed, their loved ones, they're killed during the recent uprising in Iran. They say it's a slap in the face of those families. Do you agree with that?
Look, you separate the office from the person, and when somebody who is a head of state dies in a circumstance like this, I don't think an expression of sympathy is the wrong thing.
That's the senator from Virginia, basically saying, yeah, we got to give condolences to the state leader. Mind you, this quote-unquote president from Iran, responsible for the death of Americans, responsible for the death of Israelis. Like, how crazy is this?
I think he's getting his words from the New York Times.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Soleimani that they wrote the glowing?
Yeah.
Soleimani's gone. He was
Yeah.
a scholar and so much foresight.
Yeah.
He was good at painting.
Yeah, I know. Jeffrey Berk, thank you so much for joining me. Tell me, where can people go to get the information and know, like, this is a good place to find facts on this and on combating anti-Semitism?
Truth Tells, plural.org. We give a letter rating to every sitting Jewish politician on what they're doing or truly not doing to fight it back against their anti-Semitic colleagues in Congress.
Excellent. Jeffrey Berk, thank you so much for joining me.
Awesome.
And thank you all for watching, and obviously stay in close contact with us. Go to cpac.org for all of our great shows, and wherever you get your podcast as well, you can find us there. Thank you all, and God bless.